Hi everyone, it's Dan, and welcome to Drinking a Movie. As you know, on this channel we pair cocktails and spirits to some of the greatest movies ever made, and tonight's pairing is magnifique. But before we get into it, if you're new to the channel or if you're returning and haven't done so, I'd kindly ask you to subscribe, click that like button, click that notification bell which will let you know when new videos are posted. It really helps me out and I really appreciate it. Okay, so let's talk about tonight's films. Okay, so first we'll be making a vodka-based cocktail that was born out of World War I. Now it's crisp, refreshing, and delicious, but it does pack a punch. And then next we'll be looking at a film from 1939. It may be the greatest movie you've never heard of, but the British Film Institute has it ranked number 4 of the greatest movies of all time, and that's quite an accomplishment. Great film, can't wait to talk about it. So grab your beret, allons-y!
La chanson de la rue, c'est tout à fait notre histoire.
Okay, so first on the menu is the French 76. Now this is very similar to its older brother, the French 75, but instead of using gin, it uses vodka. Other than that, exactly the same, very tasty, you can enjoy that. Next, we'll be looking at the film from 1939, is Jean Renoir's La Règle là-dessus, which translates to The Rules of the Game. Again, I mentioned that it's picked as one of the greatest movies of all time. I believe it is as well. It's just a fantastic movie, perfect for that time period, and we'll get into that as well. But before we do, hey, let's make ourselves a French 76.
Les amants de Paris couchent sur ma chanson.
Okay, to give a history of the French 76, it makes more sense to talk about the French 75. Now the 76, as we mentioned, is a variation of the 75, and the only difference between the two drinks is the 75 has gin, 76 has vodka. Other than that, they are identical. Now the drink itself dates back to World War I, and an early form was created in 1915 at the New York Bar in Paris, famous bar there. And the barman, Harry McCullum, simply called it the 75 at the time. Now it gets the name 75 from the French 75mm field gun, which was used in World War I, and the drink was said to have such a kick that it felt like being shelled by this French 75. So, interesting history there, and they're right about the kick, that's for sure. Alright, that's enough yapping, let's get mixing. Okay, first thing we need is our shaker, and we need fresh ice in our shaker, which I got here. Then we're going to add our vodka. Now, I'm using Reyka today, and sadly, my Reyka is near its end, but it's a delicious vodka out of Iceland, relatively inexpensive. I recommend it highly. Reyka, good stuff. All right, so for this we need 1.5 ounces, and there we go. Now they say they use the water, which is naturally filtered through lava rock. As you can imagine, there's volcanoes on Iceland, so very smooth. Again, highly recommended Reyka. Okay, next up we want to add a 3/4 ounce of fresh lemon juice. Now I squeezed the other half of this one here, got my juice. I didn't want to put you through watching me having to make the juice, but the juice is here, very fresh, and it goes 3/4 ounce. Alright, next up is the simple syrup. Now this is not store-bought. I did buy it at one time. Simple syrup is obviously a very important ingredient in a lot of recipes. So for this one, the original recipe called for 3/4 ounce. That's too sweet for my blood, so I'm going to go to a simple 1/2 ounce. Obviously, you can sweeten it to your heart's content, and add and play around with the measurements till you find something that you like. But for me, 1/2 ounce is perfect. Next, we get to do the old shake. Now, as you remember, we don't want to shake up and down. We want to shake side to side. And you want to shake for about 20 seconds, 30 seconds. Okay, once you're done shaking, you strain your drink into the cocktail glass. You can also use a champagne flute for this, like so. Looking good. And then we're going to top it off with some champagne, more specifically, this is Brut, Cook's version. And we are going to top it off Oh yeah, that's looking really good. And then the final ingredient are 2 cherries. And I simply plop them in. Then you can add a little bit of a stir. And you have yourselves a French 76.
Je ne sais pas si la n'est de plus blonde, mais de plus belle, il n'en est pas pour moi.
Alright, welcome to the movie chair. Now before we begin talking about tonight's movie, let's talk about tonight's cocktail. So the French 76, let's give it a shot. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, it's nice. Very refreshing. Very refreshing. That lemon juice, the champagne in particular, just really, really, just a nice flavor for sure. Now, you don't get a whole lot of the punch of the vodka, but having said that, this drink would certainly qualify as a sucker punch drink, because I could see you having a few of these. You're not getting that alcohol up front. It doesn't taste very strong, but before you know it, bam, you are hit pretty hard. So very refreshing, very tasty. I can't recommend French 76 enough. I'm also a big fan of the 75, but 76 tonight. Okay, so let's talk about tonight's movie. Rules of the game. 1939, Jean Renoir. Now, many people consider this the greatest movie ever made. And that's saying something, right? Even the British Film Institute, as I mentioned, ranked it number 4 out of the 100 greatest movies ever made. So it's just a testament to how great this film is. Now, you have Jean Renoir, one of the greatest directors of all time, in the prime of his career right here, delivering on every single front. You got a great ensemble cast. You've got a story that is just gripping and interesting. Now, on the surface, this film is a comedy of manners, but there's certainly a lot of overtones, political overtones, which we'll also talk about. But a lot going on with this film. I highly recommend it. But before I give you the reasons why, let's talk about my 3 keys. So first key, Jean Renoir. Now, we'll get into his story for sure, but not only was he an innovator, master storyteller, such an influence on the directors who followed him. There's a lot to say about this guy. He's just phenomenal from top to bottom, and we'll definitely talk more about Jean Renoir. Second is the story. Now, Renoir wrote the story, but it's such an interesting film. As I mentioned, it's comedy on one level, but also there's a lot of serious undertones, and you get that sense through the story. There's a lot of subplots kind of coexisting. Some intersect, some run parallel, but fantastic story, and we'll get into that as well. And then finally, it's the political context. Now, the fact that this film was made on the cusp of World War II is not a coincidence. It's something that Renoir knew was coming, and he baked in a lot of political undertones to this film, and you see that with some of the class distinctions here, and it's just fantastic. And we'll get into the political context of the story as well. So, all accounts, great movie. Let's get talking about Renoir. All right, so Orson Welles, legendary director in his own right, once wrote an op-ed in LA Times which was entitled Jean Renoir, the greatest of all directors. And that pretty much sums up the feeling of many directors who followed in Renoir's footsteps. The man was a master. His father was Pierre Auguste Renoir, who you may know that name from Impressionistic painting. Celebrated artist, and that obviously carried through to his son, because Jean Renoir is a celebrated artist when it comes to filmmaking. Okay, Renoir was way ahead of his time. First of all, he used deep focus cinematography, and what that means is he kept the foreground in focus and the background in focus at the same time. So you could see what other characters were doing, and you could actually see some of the subplots that were going on kind of unraveling at the same time as the foreground. So very innovative approach, something that influenced so many filmmakers, even Orson Welles, who went on to make another classic, amazing film, Citizen Kane, incorporated a lot of that same cinematography approach. So Renoir's camera effortlessly glides from room to room, down corridors and mingling between people. You really feel like you're a guest at the chateau where a lot of the action of this film takes place. And keep in mind, this is decades before the advent of the Steadicam. So the fact that he could move the camera the way it does and really involve you into it was just another example of how innovative Renoir was when it came to filmmaking. Okay, so let's talk about the story. Now, Renoir's story is really, really gripping. I mean, you're talking about a comedy on the surface, as we talked about, but a lot of stuff happening underneath. And as I mentioned, a lot of the plots, a lot of the subplots, they intersect or they run parallel, and it's just really, really interesting the way this whole story unfolds. Now, it starts off, you meet Andre, and he's an aviator hero. Think of Lindbergh. In fact, they referenced Lindbergh in the film. But so Andre crosses the Atlantic back towards France and lands. But on landing, he's heartbroken that his love, Christine, is not there to meet him. So it's pretty unrequited, his love at this point. So as he's interviewed for radio, just as he lands, he's a hero. People are cheering. He denounces her on air. And Christine, who is married to a French aristocrat named Robert, hears this and pokes fun at him with her maid Lisette. And so you get the kind of the groundwork right off the bat on some of these characters. Now, eventually, everyone is invited to Robert's country estate. And this includes Robert's mistress, Genevieve. All right, so you've got the aristocrats dealing with their business up top. You've got the help and staff underneath dealing with their plots and subplots and their stories. And when they do intersect, it's pretty explosive. And it's not unreasonable to see the almost straight line comparison to Downton Abbey and what Julian Fellowes, the creator of that show, took from Renoir. He's very inspired by Renoir and this film in particular, and it shows in that kind of storytelling. Now, we talked about this being a comedy, and we go from madcap masked balls to borderline screwball comedy to sobering emotional distress that leads to murder. And this is just a rich film from top to bottom, and the characters are all multi-dimensional. We're not talking flat, stereotypical, face value characters. They all have their motives, they all have their passions, and they all have ambitions to make these passions come real. All right, so let's talk about the political context of this film, which I find personally fascinating. In fact, I'm often drawn to films knowing when they were made and what was happening in the world or the location at that time. And in this case, it's super, super relevant. So you've got this film was a response to the Munich Agreement of 1938. And short story there, what that was the French president signed an agreement to let Hitler have Czechoslovakia. And this was all done in the hopes of maintaining peace. Now, Renoir was absolutely against this. I think he foresaw that Hitler had greater ambitions and he wasn't going to stop with this small piece. So Renoir uses the class system to highlight the hypocrisy that he sees. And it's this aristocratic class that claims to have a strict set of rules, and they got to follow the rules of the game, right? However, they all have the means to bend the rules to fit their own needs. And this is really summed up perfectly when the murder occurs. And I'm not going to spoil anything here, but when the murder occurs, one of the aristocrats just says simply, we'll tell the authorities this was an accident, and it'll all go away, right? And very telling line, as another actor says, this just creates a whole new definition of the word accident. And this type of thing is pretty telling to how, you can draw comparisons to today's world, how a lot of the folks with means can get out of things that the lower classes, if you will, can't. Okay, so in conclusion, I think everybody should see this film. not because it's some high on some list as one of the greatest of all time, not because it's so important from a political timing perspective, and not because it was such an influence on other filmmakers. Yeah, all those things are very relevant, but the bottom line is it's a great freaking movie. From top to bottom, Renoir is just in a class all his own in some ways with this film, and it's super entertaining. It's an hour and a half, 90-minute film. Yes, it's old, 1939, so it's black and white. Yes, it has subtitles because they speak French, but you should not let those things inhibit you. This is just a fun film, and I really, really want to hear if you've seen it. If you have seen it, what your thoughts are. If you haven't seen it, I'm hoping you plan to see it, and when you do, let me know. I can't go on enough about this movie, and when you have a French 76 in hand, it just accents and works perfectly with this film. A little bit of class, a little bit of that social punch. Yeah, I can't recommend this drink enough. What did you think about it? Have you had it? Have you had the 75? Let me know what you think. Leave a comment. Please like this video. Please subscribe if you haven't. It means the world to me. And then, until next time, stay healthy, stay happy. A votre santé.